This just in, the ACC is looking to do what with the conference championship in football?
You are Locked On Wolfpack, your daily podcast on the NC State Wolfpack, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Wolfpack Nation? It's time to get locked in with Locked On. Thanks for making Locked On Wolfpack your first listen each and every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Happy Wednesday to all. As always, I'm Grayson Boone, joined by former Wolfpack defensive tackle Kenton Gibbs. Kenton, I saw something slide across my desk the other day. Today is the day that we're going to talk about it. ACC Commissioner Jim Phillips is working on experimenting with the ACC Championship football game at the end of the regular season. I saw some outlandish ideas, some of which actually both of them, well, I'll say, okay, one of them does not make nearly any sense to me. However, I think the second option could potentially be a little bit fun. But there is an article posted on ESPN detailing some of the intricacies of these conversations going on. And it all kind of revolves around SMU. They entered the ACC Championship game this past year, lost to Clemson, and because they lost in the ACC title game, it seemingly put them on a little bit of a hot seat that they had to sweat out their selection into the college football playoff. Now, I was of the opinion they should be in regardless, and I think a lot of people also shared that opinion. This feels like a play to try and ensure themselves in these types of situations. We'll get into the details in just a second, but Kenton, what are your base level thoughts about the ACC trying to tinker around the conference championship?
I need Jim Phillips to turn off the LiAngelo ball. You're not supposed to get to tweaking and start letting thoughts go.
Whoa.
That's not. What are you doing? What are you doing? These are both of these proposals are bad. And I'm not going to say they're equally bad, right? Like, this is like, oh, which would you rather have happen to you? You'd have to walk over hot coals for 10 seconds, or you'd have to survive being run over by a Mack truck. Like, obviously, these two are not equally bad, but it's like, do I have to walk on the hot coals? Like, there has to be a better answer here. There has to be a world where I don't have to do this here, because this is it's just clear tomfoolery. It's just one of those moments where you just sit here and say, what? Why? What sense do either of these proposals make? And why are you trying to be so different from the other conferences in ways that objectively will just harm your conference? It's very confusing.
It definitely comes across as a move from a conference that is very insecure about where their footing is. They're shifting their feet, trying to make some kind of substance here. They have to find a way to get probably multiple teams into the CFP every year. However, these two options that I'm about to read off to you, neither of which seem like a good idea for doing that. Option number one, Jim Phillips is considering the ACC giving the regular season champ a bye and having teams seeded 2 and 3 play in the ACC championship game. To that, I say, then it's not a championship game. If the best team in the league is not in the championship game, what is the point? Why are you even playing this game? That makes little to absolutely zero sense in my mind.
I get it. I'm a little different, right? I'm a guy that, and this is documented. I finished practice with a torn bicep. I tore my bicep, didn't know it was torn, had it taped up, and was like, I guess I could keep practicing. Like, it just hurts a little bit. But in what world would any of your championship teams even want to sit out? We have seen what has happened from the bye week in the playoffs. Quick question, Grayson. 4 teams got bye weeks in this 12-team playoff, in the inaugural 12-team playoff. What were those 4 teams' records in the playoff, Grayson?
0-4. Lost all 4 of them.
Oh, well, I get it, Grayson. Those 4 teams, they must have been all the small schools, right? The G5 school was in there. Boise was in there. I know they were in there. Who else? Was it Wyoming? Were they one of the other teams?
Try on number 1 seed Oregon for size.
Well, no, because they don't play no real football out west. In the Southeast, though, they play real football. It could have been that school from Athens. It couldn't have been old Georgia.
It was that school from Athens, the number 2 seed, the Georgia Bulldogs.
So it seems to me That time off from doing what they do is not good for 18 to 22-year-olds. Who could have thunk it? Who could have thunk getting them out of their routine would be a bad thing? And you want to do this for the champion? I'm going to tell you this much. Any third place team that plays that game and any champion that sits out, both of you will go down in history as just complete and utter embarrassments to whatever school it is that you represent. Because, again, I can't imagine a world where you could tell me and my boys, it's time to line it up and prove you the best. And I'm like, I don't really feel like it. Go ahead and get somebody else to do it. Nah, that's foolish. Not to mention, you're just gamifying the system in a way that will be very apparent to the committee. Because at that point, who's your champion? The team that won your championship in terms of the championship game, or your regular season champ? Who gets in? And also, if your thought is, they're going to put in 2 if we do this, why would they not just leave out the team that won the 2 and 3 matchup?
Right. Especially
if that win is by number 3. Are we not? What is that? This is an idea that sounds smart to somebody dumb. And there's a lot of ideas like that floating around the world today, and nobody calls them for what they are. But don't worry, I will, because I'm not that nice of a guy. This idea is just dumb.
Seeing as the current model got 2 teams into the college football playoff, that is already a better idea than anything that this new debacle of a thought would bring us. So I am 136% out on the 1 seed getting a bye and the 2 and 3 seeds playing the ACC title game. That makes 0 sense. Option 2 here is the possibility of the top 4 teams playing on the final weekend of the regular season. Number 1 plays number 4, 2 plays number 3, and the winners play the following weekend, and that is the ACC Championship. So it's effectively a mini 4-team tournament to decide the ACC champion. I'm a little bit warmer on this one, and if done right, or I guess with the right amount of chaos, it could be extremely fun. You're taking the top 4 teams. Think of a scenario like this year, for example, at SMU, Clemson, Miami, and Syracuse in a mini 4-team tournament. Based on Miami and Syracuse actually playing, not on purpose in this scenario, but that result was extremely consequential in the end result for the ACC. I would be on board for a 4-team tournament. However, that would add another game onto the regular season, no? Would that not make it 13 instead of just 12? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's foolish for a whole nother reason, because number one, everybody in America is petrified about playing a game on Army-Navy week, which is stupid. It's ridiculous and it's stupid. But you can't distort rivalry week for that. Like, I don't care if we are 11-0 with a chance to go to the national championship. I don't care if we're 0-11 and we fired our 3rd coach that season. I need the opportunity to beat the Dirty Foot Club. I need that in my life. I cannot. I may perish without that, the doctors say, if you catch my drift. So with that in mind, I think that you would have to do it that way, where it's like, all right, the end of the season is rivalry week, and then the next week after that, which is traditionally reserved for Army-Navy, becomes your ACC semifinal games. And then when everybody else is playing their championship, you play your championship. But again, right now, you're looking at potentially 16 games that a team has to win a national championship, or 16 games that a team has to at least play in, rather. This would up it to 17 for ACC teams, unless you decide to cut out a non-conference game and say, hey, y'all are going to play another conference game on top of that. So I'm very intrigued to see how that would play out. I don't think this is a great idea either. Again, I don't think that it's fair or right to tell guys, hey, your reward for being good is not 1 extra game, it's 2. An extra game on top of the extra game that the other conference's best teams get. But, who knows? I think that this one is bad, but this one is not objectively one of the worst things. Like, the first idea of having the regular season champion sit out while 2 and 3 go at it, that idea was so bad. I had to call everybody in my family to make sure they were okay, because the world where that idea is allowed to flourish among us from a guy who gets paid millions of dollars to make these types of decisions, that type of world is not safe for anyone. So I had to call on all my loved ones and make sure they were okay. You should do the same. Because again, a world where a person who comes up with that is making millions to do this, what are we doing here?
Yeah, in my mind, the correct model is already the current one. I think the solution to all of this nonsense, the conference championship should matter. And if you make it to that, even if you don't win it, that should still matter. For the example of SMU, they should not have been penalized, and thank goodness they weren't. But if you make it to the conference championship, you should not be penalized for making it to the conference championship. Don't make a team sweat out their likelihood in the CFP because they have to play another extra game. And if they lose that game, all of a sudden they get leapfrogged. That makes absolutely no sense. And that is ultimately the big reason why any of this is being discussed. You can't have those teams be penalized. If you fix that, you wouldn't have to try and do too much and fix this. So I'm not a big fan of trying to tweak this conference championship game. I think it's fine how it is. If the ACC wants to get more teams into the CFP, then be better in football. Put a better product on the field. That's what you need to focus on. If you have to feel like you have to backdoor the rules or change the rules in order to get more teams in, that's an inferior move in my book.
Couldn't agree more, brother.
Coming up next, we're going to get into the triumphant return of our Hump Day Hot Takes. This comes after a quick word from our sponsors. Our first Wednesday sponsor is Prizepicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, Prizepicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, Prizepicks has made it easier than ever before to win big while enjoying all of the football action. Now it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on that action than with Prizepicks. Here's how it works for you. All you have to do is simply pick more or less on at least two players, and if those picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right, 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. This past weekend, I was all about hot takes, and we're about to be on some Wednesday hot takes here in a second. This past weekend, I took Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards and Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. I hit both, as fate would have it. It's fun to predict and easy to play, and plus with Prizepicks Flex Play, you can still double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And as always, with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as just 15 minutes. Get ready to run your game this playoff football season with Prizepicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing on Prizepicks. Don't wait any longer and take your game to the next level. Prizepicks, run your game. Middle portion of our Wednesday show, time for some Hump Day Hot Takes, the triumphant return of our Hump Day Hot Takes. I'll go ahead and get us started, and this one is not for the faint of heart. In the next 8 games for NC State men's basketball, I'm predicting that they go 2-6 or possibly worse. And I hinted at this the other day when they dropped that tough game to Cal, that the schedule is not going to get any easier from here on out. And I'll read to you the next 8 games in succession here. So you have SMU coming up on Saturday in the Lenovo Center. SMU is one of the top offenses, not in the ACC, in the country. Again, they put 117 in regulation on Miami the other night. They did get the break speed off them by Louisville, but we'll save that story for another time. SMU is going to be a tough game in Raleigh, and based on what I've seen from the Wolfpack so far, I don't have a lot of confidence that they're going to be able to pull that one off. After that, in fact, just 2 days after that, you got to go to Cameron Indoor and play Cooper Flag. Best of luck to you. Following that one, the third game is Clemson here in Raleigh. Clemson's having a very good season. They're going to be a tough team to beat. Perhaps it's a toss-up, but again, I would lean Clemson. Then you take a California road trip. You play at Cal and at Stanford. You just lost to Cal. Maybe you get them back the second time, but to do that, you got to win on the road. Then you got to play Stanford on the road. Stanford is having a relatively decent season, their first year in the ACC. So again, another tough game you got to win on the road. You come back to Raleigh again, and you got to play Louisville, who's been probably the surprise of the ACC so far. They're sitting at second in the conference. And then you play Boston College at home. Maybe that'll be a win, but I don't think anything is promised. And then you go to Chapel Hill. So of those 8 games that I just read to you, Kenton, how many do you strongly feel that will be a win? 2? Less than 2?
Grayson, leave me alone, man. What are you even doing here,
sorry,
man?
I'm sorry, but
why are you going to make me answer this question? Why you gonna make me answer this question? I see. I have never had Grayson set me up with gotcha journalism like this, ladies and gentlemen.
It's crazy. I'm not even hating either. I'm not even trying
it's
to
the
be a
truth.
hater.
It's the truth. Yeah. It's the truth. This team, it's not just that they're really bad. It's also that this is a tough stretch for anybody.
Yeah.
Like Grayson's already talked about, this isn't a stretch that I'm like, man, you put any team in the nation through this, and I have a feeling that 9 wins is the expectation. No, this really is. I see 2, and for my spades players out there, 2 in the possible. That's all I got for you. I can't, mind you, we're saying that you feel strongly about being wins. So I see 2 and 1 that I'm like, I wouldn't be shocked. So that's pretty much what we got going there. But again, Grace and I are happy to be wrong about this. Like
Absolutely.
we would be very happy to look up and be like, look at that. Did we just go undefeated through this stretch?
Yeah.
Did we do the thing?
Yeah, I want to reiterate here. I'm not hating. I don't want to go 2-6. I'd prefer to win all of these games if the cards are on the table. I don't want to see this team struggle. I don't even want to see Coach Keats struggle, because after everything we saw last year, to revert all the way back to this that we're watching this year, that sucks for every single person involved. So I'm not hoping this team tanks. I'm not hoping they fail. But what we're watching right now, there's not a whole lot of confidence that they're going to be able to turn this thing around. It's a tough stretch, and they're not playing good basketball right now. That kind of is what it is. So if they prove us wrong, I will be overjoyed. But until then, we're going to sit here and wait and watch. Kenton, hit us with your Hump Day hot take.
Everybody's going to call me crazy here. But one of these two things, these two things is going to happen. One of these two things is going to happen next year. Dorn and this football team are going to win 5 games or less, or 8 games or more. One of those two things is going to happen. I don't know which one. I don't know. There are multiple factors that I need to see before I am fully ready to say, hey, this is a 5-ish win team, or this is an 8+ win team. I don't know. But what I do know is all the signs point to that being the case. You lose both of your coordinators. Generally, that's a sign that either you're having great success or great failure. The problem is for NC State, it's both and neither at the same time.
Yeah.
Offensively, you saw great failure. Defensively, you saw so much success. Your defensive coordinator was a highly coveted candidate. So there's that. You look at roster turnover and you say that's not really indicative of how successful a team is or is not anymore in the era of the playoff. But NC State has meaningfully addressed multiple positions of need. The problem is, how will those guys gel and mesh with what is already in place? And how will the guys that are currently on the roster mesh and gel with the new defensive style, with the new offensive style, with new approaches to all these things? So it's very, very much so a moment for me where I'm saying either this is a swimming success or a burning failure.
Yeah, and I certainly wouldn't disagree. I think when you do lose the coordinators, you do lose a lot of key defenders. The team is still going to be young. A lot of our stars obviously were freshmen, especially on the offensive side. So you still are a relatively young team, and we're still kind of feeling things out. We're still gelling as a new unit in 2025, and there's a lot of unknown up in the air. And when you couple unknown with a much tougher schedule than one that you faced in 2024, yeah, I 100% see where you're coming from. I do think my initial gut prediction right now, if you had to make me choose a prediction, I would sit at 6-6 right now. So that's right in the middle of your two windows there, but I wouldn't be surprised per se by 5. And something to be said about Coach Dorn and I guess lower expectations. Historically, the lower expectations are where his teams have really excelled. 2020, for example, I believe their win total was like either 5.5 or 6.5 that year. And they finished with 8. So we might be getting one of those years on the other side of this. However, the concern for me in 2025 is that schedule. Just real quickly, I'll roll down here. You got ECU, UVA, and Campbell at home. Duke, Miami, Pittsburgh, Wake Forest, and Notre Dame all on the road. And then ACC games at home. You have Florida State, Georgia Tech, the Dirty Foot Club, Virginia Tech, And yeah, that's it. Of those 12 games, Kenton, we kind of talked about this just a little bit ago. Again, how many of those do you really feel good about? 5, 6? I think it's right in that range. So I wouldn't even call that a hot take, so to speak. I think you're pretty much right on the money. Again, this is from 1,000 yards away because we're in the middle of January, but there's still a lot, and I do mean a lot, to be proven for this football team in 2025. And last note, I've seen some win totals start to trickle out on the betting apps for a couple schools. Ours has not been released, but if you had to guess, Kenton, where would you put it?
I think that it's going to be right in that area that you're talking about, 5.5, 6 games. I think that's probably going to be the amount that everybody is going to be putting their money on. But I'm going to tell you, there's a very specific reason why I have ruled out 6 to 7 games. This is a team that I'm not sure which way they're going to go, looking at that schedule and the mixed bag that is this team in terms of experience. While we do have a lot of talent, a lot of these guys are very young. How many years has Noah Rodgers played football? And by play football, I mean meaningful snaps in college.
1.
What about Hollywood Smothers?
1.
Terrell Anderson?
1.
Keenan Jackson?
1.
Your quarterback, your signal caller, CJ Bailey?
1.
No. And I have a sneaky suspicion that not only up front, but in the backfield, you're going to be relying on some guys who are also in that 1 or 0 category. So, I'm looking at this situation and I'm saying to myself, it's easy to see how a young team either gets rattled or their seniors step up, their senior leaders lead, and all of a sudden they band together and do some things where you're looking up like, how the hell did we do that? But the only problem is, again, 6 and 6, it gives too much up and down. It gives too much, we weren't sure what this team is. I think this team, you're going to find out early whether it's going to be a crash and burn or a swimming success.
The actual schedule for NC State in terms of dates and, the order in which you're playing teams, I think that's going to be released next week. So perhaps we can do an episode where we give our preliminary expectations as far as an actual schedule goes. It will be interesting to see how that lays out for the Wolfpack, and perhaps that'll change our mind based on what we're expecting so far in 2025. Coming up next, we're going to get into a little bit of NC State baseball talk. We're now under 1 month away from first pitch, and we have a preseason All-American in the back end of our bullpen. More on this after a quick word from our sponsors. Our second Wednesday sponsor is Talkspace. Therapy is a game changer. It can help manage stress, improve sleep, and communicate more effectively. But finding the right therapist and fitting sessions into a busy schedule can be a real challenge. That's where Talkspace comes into play. Talkspace is the leading virtual therapy provider, making getting the help you need easy, accessible, and affordable. With Talkspace, signing up is simple. You can match with a licensed therapist who fits your needs, usually within just 48 hours. And it's convenient. You can have the sessions from the comfort of your home and even message your therapist between appointments. Plus, Talkspace is covered by many insurance plans, and for most insured members, there's a $0 copay. It's never been easier to prioritize your mental health. As a listener of this podcast, you can get $80 off your first month with Talkspace when you go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege. Enter the promo code SPACE80. That's SPACE80, SPACE80 to match with a licensed therapist today. Go to Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege. Enter the promo code SPACE80. $80 off your first month and show your support for the show. That's Talkspace.com/LockedOnCollege, promo code SPACE80. Last couple of minutes of our Wednesday show, a little bit of NC State baseball talk. We are inching closer and closer to first pitch, which I believe is actually on Valentine's Day, so just a couple weeks away. D1 Baseball released their preseason All-American list, and NC State had one not on just any list, but a first-team All-American. It is sophomore relief pitcher Jacob Duden, who exploded onto the scene last year for the Wolfpack, especially later on in the season, became a unstoppable 1-2 punch with him and Derek Smith at the back end of the bullpen. Jacob Duden, based on the season he had last year, he also had Team USA honors over the summer, has been tabbed as a preseason All-American for the Wolfpack. I had heard some whispers about Duden potentially being stretched out to being a starting pitcher. However, I'm not really expecting that to be the case anymore. When you have a pitcher as dominant as Jacob Duden can be, I think you keep him right there in the back of that bullpen with Derek Smith, and you have one of the best bullpens in the country.
Mr. Duden, with all due respect, I advise Deads as your walk-up song. I'm just saying. Listen, all I'm saying is those chords alone, the strings that come in alone are enough to have him like, I may be in trouble. Jacob Duden is in fact coming. But I'll tell you what, this young man is phenomenal. I mean, how many teams did he shut the door on last year to get us to Omaha? How many times were we like, oh boy, he's up against one of the best hitters in America? Jacob Duden made the 3rd overall pick weak in the knees like SWV was playing. He got so weak in the knees he could hardly speak. He lost all control and something took over him because that bat was not moving. I'll tell you what, Jacob Duden is a guy. No moment has been too big for him. Wow. Missing out on saying Jacob Duden is a dude was what a miss there. But anyway, he's one of those guys that no moment is too big. He's a flatliner. You don't see him start to get frazzled, start to get out of his mechanics, start to get out of his motion. But he's like, oh, this is a big moment. I've got to overthrow this thing. I've got to over-aim it. He knows that he's prepared for those big moments. He knows that he's prepared to put the best of them down, and that's what he's done time and time and time again. He deserves this. He has earned this. And again, I would love to continue to watch this young man grow and do all the great things that he does as a closer. If he's a starter, that'd be interesting too. But, I tend to agree with Grayson in that I think he's best in that closing role where, again, when he comes into the game, everybody knows them brothers in trouble. Them hitters in trouble.
Yeah, now you made a great point about the moment and Jacob Duden thriving in the moment. Last year was literally just a true freshman, but that did not stop him from closing the door on the Dirty Foot Club, teams like Virginia or Clemson or a regional hosted in Raleigh for the first time in I think 5 or 6 years, or on the road in a super regional against the best hitter in the country. Didn't matter. You put him in Omaha in high leverage situations, still finds a way to thrive. I'm still upset that he gave up that home run. I still think it's not his fault. It was a great swing. Nonetheless, when you factor in his impact as just a freshman last year, and then his electric stuff, this is a kid that can run it up there at 98 miles an hour, not to mention sliders on the black, clocking in at like 91. That's unhittable. For a freshman, for a senior, for someone who's already in Major League Baseball, that's unhittable stuff. And so for him to be tabbed as a preseason All-American this year, it's not a surprise. And it is nothing less than absolutely well-deserved. I cannot wait to see what he brings to the table for year 2. Jacob Duden is an electric force in the bullpen. I do think that's where he's best served, and I cannot wait to watch him get this thing going here in just a number of weeks. That'll do it for us here on Wednesday. As always, thank you all so much for joining us. Be sure to hit that like button, drop your comments in the comment box, mash that subscribe button if you have not already. We'll see you right back here tomorrow on Thursday for more, and until then, go Pack.
Go Pack.